Over a while, I've been covering various agent concepts by you guys, the community, and today I've montaged everything I've put on the channel into one single video. Hopefully you haven't seen all of these because the community is extremely creative. So without further ado, enjoy like 20, 21, 22 agent concepts that the community has made. All sources down below, and some of these are just so creative. Riot, take notes, please. This very first agent concept comes from Wholesome Origins. The background is that they just want a controller agent to counter Astra because their daughter mains Astra. Oh my goodness. This controller, which looks like it's outfitted with a battle sage looking outfit, kind of like, you know how Sage's robe is the white and blue, but then got armor everywhere, looks freaking amazing. But let's read what this controller can do. The first one is Honor, which would allow you to buy your chosen teammate full body armor. I assume they mean full shield. Now this is interesting because would it make it so that the team can request armor and only Axon can buy it? That seems kind of not just broken, but way too finicky. So instead I was thinking, you know, maybe Axon can throw armor at the team. You know, think of like a Killjoy Molly. It gets thrown, but this little Molly actually gets absorbed by your team and then gives them armor. You only get one of it, and then it gives a half shield, which is 25, or maybe a full shield, which is 50, and can only be used once and cost as much as a full armor, maybe, or maybe just 20% cheaper than a full armor. I don't know. Very, very, very interesting topic though. The next ability is called Dazed. Place a bomb trap card, Q, in a certain area. Anyone stepping onto it gets triggered. It explodes, causing a blind to the enemy target. So it's literally a blind trap. This is super, super cool because we can imagine any sort of trap on the ground, but when it actually initiates, it pops up and then blinds the player. That's pretty cool. The next one is Break a Leg. Equip a trap badge. Fire to place the trap at the targeted location, reactivate to detonate the trap, and turn the player's movement in reverse. This is funky as heck. Imagine running into a trap and then all of a sudden your W starts making you go backwards and then you start moving left and right. Maybe your mouse gets inverted. Something that actually messes with your control is crazy because the skill ceiling for countering will literally just be whoever's big brain enough to immediately switch up their controls and mentally be able to aim or move the opposite direction. The next one is Aftermath, which is activate X to, I guess, initiate commander mode, send a decoy in a zone, and then reactivate again to disable any abilities that are deployed for 3 seconds. Wow, that's kind of like a KO knife, but instead think of a hybrid between a Yoru clone and a KO knife, but you actually control the Yoru clone and then maybe press to reignite it, and that explodes in a much wider area, disabling all abilities for 3 seconds. It might even need to be 4 or 5 since KO knife already exists as a normal ability. Quite interesting, quite interesting. This character is super cool. Next we got Buck. Yeah, Buck. Literally says hatched in Canada. The sentient Buck jumps into the flight with his combat suit, Goliath. His abilities can provide lots of support for teammates, so there's no fear when Buck is on your side. Bro, why is he hatched in Canada, bro? As a Canadian, I don't know if I should feel offended or proud. Alright, so we got C, Buck Bomb. It is 1 charge and costs 300 credits. Equip a timed bomb. Fire to throw the bomb, alt fire to toss it in a shorter distance. 6 seconds after touching the ground, the bomb will detonate, creating a smoke cloud that provides a small amount of healing to allies inside of it. Oh, that's kind of cool. So think of that's kind of cool, kind of like Sky's AoE heal, but instead it is a smoke cloud of healing. That actually sounds really, really cool. The next one is Buckshot, which is this Q. Equip a feather launcher. Fire to shoot a pile of feathers in a short distance. Reuse the ability to activate the pile, spinning the feathers into a small twister, pushing any enemies upwards for a short distance. That is a complex ability that would be hard to use. The best way, it's 2 charges, 100 credits each. The best way I can think of it, launch Buckshot in an area where enemies would usually hide for post or pre-plant or whatever, a common enemy spot, and then it would be completely invisible, so when they're sitting on top of it, you reactivate and it maybe pops their head over a box momentarily so you can shoot them or headshot them. That's quite the interesting ability. The next one is E, which is Buck Vision. 2 charges, which add 5 seconds each to the duration of Buck Vision, 200 credits each. Instantly cast a circle 7.5 meters in diameter around you and your allies for a default period of 5 seconds. Anyone within the circle is immune to any flashes or blinding abilities until the duration is up. Whoa, that is such a unique concept. That and Buck Bomb. So that means you could throw a healing cloud, throw down Buck Vision, and then no matter what areas the enemies peek you out, even if they flash you, you get immune to it? An anti-flash area. That is so unique. What do you guys think about that? That That is actually so unique. Last but not least is Buck Wild, the 7 ultimate point ultimate. Equip an inject button, fire to exit Goliath, and enter Rooster mode. In Rooster mode, you have less health, but you run faster, have a smaller hitbox, and have less accuracy penalty when firing. After 15 seconds, Goliath will begin walking towards you and your health will begin to slowly drain the longer you are away from Goliath. What the heck? So you eject yourself out of this bot, you run around as a little chicken, shooting people at higher accuracy, and the further you're getting away from your bot, the more basically glass cannon-y you become because your health gets lowered. What the heck? I can barely envision that. I don't even want to bother trying to balance that. Maybe instead you can launch yourself out and then fly through the air as a rooster, maybe detonating or shooting along the way before it puts you back in the bot. I have no idea. That ultimate is so wild, I can actually barely comprehend it. Next, we have Grave. This guy looks so cool, dude. This guy looks straight badass. What the heck? All right, he has sacrificial healing. Equip a healing ring. Fire with your crosshair over a damaged ally to heal them over time. Can be reused until health reaches 1. Oh my goodness, it's like you're a walking Reyna orb and you can remove your health to give it to an ally. While I think that's super cool, that's very problematic to Valorant because someone would be like, yo, just give me your health because I'm playing better or whatever. Instead, it needs to be tactical. So maybe every 1 health point you give out converts to 2. Then there's Wandering Ghost. Equip a ghost ring, fire to send it forward, bouncing off walls. The ghost will lock onto any enemies and chase them, dazing them if it reaches them. Oh, okay. That's kind of like a Fade Prowler, but instead it's Fade Prowler x Yoru Flash. Pretend a Yoru Flash that you can bounce around a corner, but then if it catches an enemy, it kind of zooms to them as a ghost and dazes them. That's kind of cool. I like that. Then there's Ghastly Fear, which you can regen by killing 2 enemies, by the way. Equip a cross ring, instantly fire a ghastly projectile forward, disabling skills of all players it touches. This projectile can pass through walls. Ooh, this skill will also disable deployed skills like Killjoy Turret and Cypher's Camera. This is kind of like the knife, the KO knife. Okay, so this is Omen Blind x KO knife. Imagine you throw an Omen Blind through, and then it disables everyone's abilities nearby. Ooh, that's kind of cool. That's pretty cool, actually. But it makes it kind of easy to hit, maybe? No, KO knife is already easy to hit. Anyways, Graveyard, the ultimate, 7 points. Equip a Gravestone ring, fire to create a border around Grave that reduces enemies' health while healing Grave. Enemies who enter the radius will be highlighted on the map. Whoa, dude. So that's like oh my goodness. Imagine you pop this ult. Imagine how like Reyna's healing comes from an orb, but then it's coming from all angles who are enemies inside the area. What? And then as they're in the area, they're revealed on the map. That sounds broken. That sounds broken. But to not say it sounds cool would be a lie. It sounds super cool. Grave seems broken, but so cool. Now this I feel would be kind of like a fan favorite. This would be new agent concept Cage or / Shadow. This is cool. This was like pretty new actually, just like a month ago. Hey everyone, I just made this concept for a new agent called Cage, Shadow in Japanese. Brief backstory of Cage. Cage, Shadow, was born into a clan of ninja warriors and trained from a young age in stealth, speed, and deadly precision. When an ancient powerful enemy threatened the clan, Cage and his fellow ninjas fought to save their people. But he would end up blasted from a Radianite-powered weapon and gain his superpowers. After the conflict, Cage was recruited by the agents of Valorant to use his abilities for the greater good. As a member of the elite team of operatives, Cage uses stealthiness, speed, and deadly precision to take down enemies and defend the innocent. Really, really cool. This is so cool. So he's still developing the abilities, but I wanted to have a whirl at it myself. So these are the abilities I think Cage would be super cool with. So I was using Jet as well as the RGX blade, but the RGX blade, pretend it's like an actual silver blade katana, and Cage would be able to run around with higher speed. So when he pulls out the katana, he gets to actually physically run faster and able to one-shot someone if he's able to melee them. But of course, meleeing in Valorant is no easy task already, and it wouldn't be for Cage either. So it would be equipped with a few abilities to support this playstyle. Cage could have this some kind of semi-dash similar to Jet, but it would dash through a wall, which I believe kind of outstands his Shadow gameplay. So imagine dashing through a wall and then being able to like slash someone with a katana. I don't know, the gameplay barely makes sense for Valor, but come on, it sounds cool. And then I thought maybe, you know how Jet has these smokes? Imagine if he has the very similar idea, but they're kind of like a black version, and the inside of it is almost like Reyna's eye, and then you could throw it up into the air, blind someone above, dash through a wall, and then start just blading them up as they're blinded. That would be so cool. And then you know what? His ultimate could actually be very similar to Jet, but instead of Jet knives all around, it wouldn't show knives. Instead, he'd throw kunais, but similar idea. With one shot to the head, 3 shots to the body. It could work actually very similar to Jet knives, but they're just kunais, or maybe, I guess Jet knives are kunais. Sorry, I meant shuriken. It would be shurikens. But enough fanboying with my own idea. Let's talk about Kitsune. Kitsune is so freaking cool. The mock-up is quite like still kind of sketched out, but you can kind of see the entire idea. And the description reads, master of the legendary Japanese fox, Kitsune never revealed her real name. Experienced in the art of witchcraft, she peeks behind enemy lines and tracks them easily. Enjoy the protection of the subtly foxes and surprise your enemies, always one step ahead of everyone. And you know what? With Kitsune Rush in Overwatch, you know, there's literally Kiriko, a hero in Overwatch, which is crazy, but this was made in 2020, so this is early. First, there's Fur Shield, which is C, summons the protective power of the foxes and creates a shield that leaves her immune to damage and lasts 2 seconds. She is unable to shoot while this ability is active. The price would be 200. Then there's Foxtail, the Q. Equip a foxtail that is visible and relatively large, but that is immune to damage and leaves an almost invisible trail on the ground with the width of 2 meters and a maximum extension of 15 meters wherever she passes. Any enemy over the trail can be seen on the map by Kitsune. The skill is active for 10 seconds. So if this doesn't make sense, pretend kind of like a magical powder coming out of your tail. You're running away. That powder is nearly invisible, almost invisible, and if enemies are chasing you or walk over it, you get vision on the map. That's actually a very powerful ability. Then there's Fox Paws, which would be E. Equip Fox Paws that last 2.5 seconds and cause enemies to not know from which direction the sound of her footsteps are coming from. Recharges every 30 seconds. The sound of the steps will change from right side to left side and vice versa, repeatedly confusing opponents. This is insane. It means if the game was to translate audio from Kitsune's footsteps into your headsets, the ability will start confusing it, meaning it'll transfer that audio sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right, making it hard to track her. Last but not least, there's the invisibility totem, which is X. Place a medium-sized totem on the floor that emits sound within a 15-meter radius and allows Kitsune and the closest ally to be invisible for 7 seconds. However, while running or shooting, they are visible again, and if the totem is broken, the effect's cancelled immediately. This one actually sounds somewhat balanced for an invisible ability, and I will admit to the artist, if you were to combine all these abilities together, it's pretty cool, because let's say you're getting shot at, you throw up your first shield, you drop down your foxtail, which allows you to know where they're coming from. Then you could use your E, which is your fox paws, to confuse which direction you went from, and maybe wrap around. When you're wrapping around, you can then pop your invisibility totem and play out onto sight, again repositioning. It's just all about catching the enemy by surprise, and I rate Kitsune super hard for this playstyle. Anyways, Kabuto. Just take a step back, look at this panel. So much going on, but let's explain this first fan concept. Kabuto the Possessed Obsidian. Now, Kabuto has always been called a hero in his hometown, and his backstory is extremely cool. Basically, he was an excellent doctor who wanted to look young once again. He heard about a ruin which lays far away in an obsidian temple. No one dared to get close, but Kabuto went off on his little adventure, but he never came back. Now, this agent is actually a figure of a lost memory who is believed to be dead, discovering a temple over 800 years ago. However, his memory has never been mentioned, and the people feel his presence through the houses and land. So you're playing kind of as a ghost. So keep that in mind when you read his abilities, because dude's got actually a really cool backstory. Now, the base idea of Kabuto is that he holds 2 separate katanas, a swiftness katana and a reaper katana. The on-hand buff for the swiftness is that it increases his walking speed by 20%, which is insane, and the Reaper Katana buff is that you can harvest 50 HP per kill. Now, some balancing actually happens with the first ability, which is the C ability, Situational Swapping. Kabuto swaps to his other katana. The katana will stay on his side and will not appear until ready to send a quick dash. This ability will not trigger any sound, so you can swap katanas every 25 seconds, okay? Then, his Q, Obsidian's alleviation, Kabuto locks himself into an animation and then regenerates 60 HP over time for 6 seconds. This actually seems kind of weak because he's stuck for 6 seconds, which sounds a little bit too insane. It also triggers sounds and burning for anyone who is close. So this reminds me of League of Legends. I think Master Yi is his name. When he heals, he stands still and starts healing himself. Then he has his E, which is a quick slash. Now what's cool here is its effect changes depending on your katana. If you have the swiftness katana, it sends a wave that will knock and damage enemies on hit. If you have the Reaper katana, it sends a wave that will bleed and paranoid all enemies on hit. Bleed and paranoid just sounds kind of like an insane combo. It is a quick slash, so upon tapping the ability, Kabuto will get buffed depending on the katana that he's holding. You press left click to send a unique shockwave that will pass through walls at a maximum range of 15 meters, similar to Omen's Paranoia, but it's a shockwave. Now, the right click will set the katana at a deflective mode, and then it dashes you forward. You also deflect 50% of all incoming bullets. So we're kind of playing Genji to some extent. I do find some of the balancing unique. Maybe we're getting too crazy for Valorant, but the idea is that it's a dash similar to Jet, but let's say as Jet's dashing forward, if bullets were coming her way, now Jet's immune, but let's say Kabuto, if you were just opping and you hit the op shot, there's a 50% chance the bullet gets deflected. While if you're spamming with Odin, it's probably still gonna kill him. So it's a very unique concept. Now I know he sounds kind of overwhelming because even as I'm reading it, you guys get a ton of visuals and a lot of cute little things going on to hopefully help sell the idea. But keep in mind, when it comes to a real agent, someone like Astra at face value is actually very complicated, right? Like 5 stars all do different things. Once a character is genuinely made, it's a little more cohesive, and I could see Kabuto being cohesive. Now, he still has his ultimate, which is Okazaki's Ancestor. This one, a little bit wild. Upon activation, Kabuto will enter the possessed mode, being able to fight normally until he dies. On death strike, so when he hits 0 HP, Kabuto will perish, and Okazaki will come out from his body, gaining 20% movement speed and automatically chasing an enemy agent, eventually taking control of his body. The agent they possess will be blinded and unable to fire or use abilities. Kabuto's weapons will be refunded for the next round, and the killer will lose all his weapons next round. This is way too whack. It doesn't even make any sense. I like the idea that once you activate, when you die, when KO die, he falls to the floor. So to alter this better is like when Kabuto dies, the possession comes out, and similar to a Yoru clone with like AI, it will chase the enemy. The enemy can either maybe defeat it, run away, somehow avoid it, but it'll move fast enough where there's a chance that it hits the enemy, paralyzing the enemy. No need to mess with the economy or weapons, just paralyzing the enemy, and it's still good. It means when Kabuto ults, plays for a kill, and then dies, that clone can still create space, like, or that possessed automatic moving thing can still create space. You don't really need to do a bunch of all of the extra stuff because the concept itself is already very cool. All right, on to the next agent. Lorca is a really well thought out agent, and I love the design. I love the visuals provided. We'll try to animate something to make it interesting, but of course that can be a little bit hard. But let's start with her biography. So nothing is more charismatic than a woman who yields 2 giant gauntlets just for the sake of protecting her team. Lorca found a way to freely manipulate a rare form of slimy water and transform it into any shape and tool, giving her insanely unique abilities and combat advantages for herself and even her teammates. Lorca worked for 6 years with Kingdom, then left her badge at the 7th year to protect her country, since Kingdom only focused on bigger missions and battles. Let's get into it, starting with the sea bubbly trap. Lorca fixes a device on the wall that will launch a thick water bubble onto its first spotted enemy. Enemies who get touched by the bubble will get deafened and lifted up from the ground for X seconds. Now, admittedly, I gotta say, it's pretty interesting. We do have deadlock now with that sound trap. I think the bubbly trap wouldn't be as useless because it actually stops them from moving and lifts them up from the ground for a moment of time. X seconds just means it's up for interpretation on how much you think that would be balanced. I definitely think it's super cool. Next we have Q, Watery Gifter. Lorca pulls up her watery arm and aims at her ally, actively healing him for X duration and X seconds and consuming some of her water fuel tank. So think Viper with that fuel tank, but it's creating a water chain of some sort that heals your allies. So kind of like Mercy from Overwatch, when you're throwing out that heal, you gotta connect to them. Aiming at enemies will recharge recharge the water tank over time. This is weird because it means, let's say you get behind an enemy, you might want to try to grab some water to refill your tank and then kill them. I think this is completely unnecessary. I think it should just be a tank that has, maybe that tank can heal a total of 200 HP for the entire round. You can use it all on one person. You can divide it, maybe 100 HP the entire round. Same idea. They're more like Sky. You know how Sky's heal works? It's something like that. Something like that makes more sense. A targeted heal that's stronger though than Sky's AoE one. Now the thing that makes it different than something like Sky and more like Viper is because Slimy Surface, Lorca consumes half of her water tank and releases a straight watery path for X amount of seconds that will benefit her allies with bonus movement speed while acting like a slippery surface for her enemies. I can't imagine Riot making like a slippery effect on agents, like if you let go of your movement key after running, you slide a little bit and you're inaccurate. But to be honest, if they can make ISO an entire new dimension, they can make something like this, because this actually sounds lit. Like getting onto site while making map control, because if your enemies step on it, they become inaccurate because they're sliding around. Like that's actually really, really cool. Now X, the ultimate Bubble Mania. Lorca opens a big range and causes a big circular water surface that will continuously spawn bubbles from the ground up. Oh, blocking vision and trapping an enemy caught by the bubble while it's forming. Enemies caught by the bubble of the ultimate will have the same debuff as the bubble trap, so they float into the air. Sounds a lot like Harbor. Now, all these came out way before Harbor, Deadlock, etc. Just keep that in mind. But that, like Harbor's Tsunami is very similar to what this idea is. And to be honest, it does fit her very, very well. I think this sounds a lot more fun than Harbor. I mean, it's a Sentinel instead of a controller. I think that X is really cool. Some AoE similar to Harbor, but it bubbles them up into the air. You know what? That sounds really lit. I like this agent a lot. Next, we're going to be talking about Set. You can see his design here. He's actually based on the Egyptian god of storms and deserts. A Radiant uses his powers around sand to hinder his enemies and support his allies, and he is a controller. Let's get into it, starting with C, Dune Rounds. Buy one, which will cost 200, and last 10 seconds. Destroyable. It has 150 HP. Equip a sand pillar. Fire to place the pillar. Upon placement, the pillar will funnel sand bullets to all allies in range, providing unlimited ammo. Same radius as Brimstone Stim Beacon, so not very big. All allies in the abilities field will not have their bullets go below 1 in the current clip, meaning just infinite ammo. However, if you're at 0 bullets and you start reloading and then walk in, it doesn't cancel the animation, so you don't just get instant unlimited ammo. There needs to already be ammo in your gun. 3 of you buy Odin. He throws down the sand pillar. You all go in there and just infinite spam. Why this is insane is because it's actually a completely new strategy. It means, like, let's say in Ascent, you know how there's that area where you can spam the Odin as they're trying to rush the site. You can throw that down first and hold down like 10 seconds. 10 seconds straight, then the Odin's bullets start depleting after. You can completely control that area permanently for like 15 seconds. So maybe a little too strong, but I love how unique it is. The next ability, Q, Sand Trap. Buy 2, each cost 100, lasts 5 seconds. Equip a sand trap. Fire to throw a sand trap forward that expands upon landing, creating a small field that slows all players' movement against the directional arrow. Alt fire rotates the directional arrow. Only movement directly against the arrow is slowed. All other direction movement is not slowed or sped up. This is actually extremely weird because think of a Sage Orb, but depending on the directional arrow you put, let's say which is forward, when they're walking against it, they're slowed, but not the other way. Don't like this, too complicated. Anytime you're complicating a simple ability, it's not going to be good for the game. So instead, similar to a Sage Orb, just copy it. It's okay if we had another Sage Orb in the game, but it's sand, you kind of slow down as location. A little bit of an editing hiccup, but the next one is E, which is Sandstorm. You basically get to deploy it like an Omen Smoke to move the marker further away. Hold the ability key with targeting to move the marker closer. Map indicators are exactly like Omen Smoke, which you probably already imagined. Unlike Omen Smoke though, the Sandstorm travels across the map at its full size and at a slower speed, but faster than a player's running speed. So it means Omen kind of shoots it and then it expands when it gets to its point. Instead, it's more similar to a harbor wall. It will move forward and then settle where you've decided. All players caught in the Sandstorm while it is traveling or stationary are nearsighted. So TLDR, you are mixing harbor wall, probably a lot smaller, or still a circle or a sandstorm effect, with Omen Smoke, the way it's deployed, and as it's traveling, it's also Omen's Paranoia. Yeah, I mean, this kind of sounds kind of cool though. I'm not gonna lie, it sounds actually pretty cool. Now when it comes to X, his ultimate Mirage, 7 ultimate points, last 10 seconds and destroyable, but It has 2000 HP. All right. Okay. Equip a Mirage Fire to create a sandy wall that moves forward, forming a mirage that hides allied players on the other side from enemy vision. Oh my god. That sounds sick. So imagine a harbor wall you throw out, but the enemies don't see it coming because it's like a slightly distorted vision, and behind the wall it's like kind of clear. So you're invisible. Yo, that's crazy cool idea. They'll hear the footsteps, or maybe if the walk's low, limit its usage. Okay. Has a minimum and maximum range that extends across. Does not hide the spike, dropped weapons, or casted abilities. So if Reyna throws a blind, it could, like, for example, ruin the plan. There is a telltale shimmer glow where the mirage is placed, making it easier for both teams to tell where it's placed. So yeah, there's something you can pay attention to. Allies can see enemies through it, but enemies can't see allies. It's a one-way mirror. Ally bullets do not damage the mirage. Enemy bullets damage the mirage and anything directly behind it. Okay, so the mirage does not stop bullets, meaning if there's 5 of you and they're spraying and praying, the mirage is being broken and you're still taking damage. That is pretty cool. This is a cool freaking agent. All right, on to the next one. The agent Curvix. I would say that the overall styling and art is kind of bare bones, but what is very, very interesting is that he just doesn't really look human. I actually think he might be too out of place, but then I remember something like KO is a straight up robot and they figured it out. So maybe creature-esque is possible. I have trouble imagining it in Valorant, but I could be wrong. I'm just having trouble imagining it. Now, let's go through the abilities, starting with the C ability, Forgive Yourself. Curvix marks an ally for the rest of the round. If the marked ally receives damage, then remains untouched, he will begin to regenerate health over time, refunding his missing health. However, it does trigger sound over the healing time, so your location stays obvious. This reminds me, of course, a lot of Zenyatta from Overwatch. The next ability, which is Q, Calm Down. Curvix puts his hands together and releases a small wave that will stop all agents from firing their weapons for X amount of seconds. Curvix won't also be able to fight. The ability range will be visible seconds before activating. Now, I don't know exactly about how this could work, like just immediately calming down an area, conceptually just stopping fighting is a little bit weird for Valorant. I am thinking it more like, you know how KO when he ults, there's a AoE effect, it suppresses abilities. So I do wonder instead if it could be another suppression ability that just stops, just stops abilities. Similar to KO knife in a decent range. He puts his hands together, boom, 10 seconds, no abilities, can be used to initiate, or if you're in a 1v1, you hide behind cover, boom, you send it out in a big area of effect from your body, and then you turn to just have a gunfight. That could work. I don't know about stopping bullets though. I think that's too abrupt for Valorant in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. Now E, you don't need that. Now we need to work on the ability names here, but either way, Curvix places a weird looking device that will start sucking the nearest weapon ammo from its enemy agent over time, while triggering sounds over time. The device can be destroyed upon its activation, notifying Curvix upon its destruction. So basically, he throws down a little weird looking device, and if 5 people rush that site, they all start losing some ammo. That is kind of creative. Now, it depends. Is it reservoir ammo or main ammo? Because that can be insane. Dude's running in with a shorty, 2 bullets, and like the 2 bullets are gone. I don't know how you could balance this. I love the concept, but I cannot imagine how it could be balanced, which is the main issue. All right, next we have Inner Peace Aura, which is his ultimate X. Curvix channels and glows up, opening a big blast range that will prevent all upcoming crowd control effects for all existing agents in the range. Disturbing Curvix while his ultimate is running will cancel its effect. So this one seems too weak because it's way too niche, meaning you'd waste an ult for an area of effect just to stop stuff like Sage slows or trips, or the entire idea here is at this point you might as well just have a KO ult. So unfortunately this one seems too weak unless we buff it and instead it just neutralizes all effects. So like even Viper Poison or any effect you can imagine gets neutralized and slowly heals them over time. So you can kind of maybe like in a site area slowly heal the entire team over time while suppressing all crowd control and other defects on the team. Maybe at that point it could work out. Otherwise it probably be a little bit too weak, but still, I gotta give him credit. It is a unique idea and design. Last but not least, we have XTR or extra. All we have is this picture. There's actually no abilities, but it's more on the character design. It's obviously, let's just keep it honest, very suggestive, which isn't super weird. Like Riot has Ari or other characters on the League side that's even based their abilities around being suggestive. Raz. Now, his overall design here is a little bit blurry and kind of hard to see and doesn't fit the exact style of Valorant, but it's enough for us to understand the image that the artist is trying to portray. Now, Raz is actually a controller. In his biography here is a wizard from India. Raz can use his mystical abilities to control the battlefield. He disrupts enemy vision, blocks pathways, and provides cover for allies while being able to tap into the enemy's viewpoint. I know, sounds very similar to Harbor, but this design was way before Harbor. And I'm not gonna lie, overall seems a lot better than Harbor. Maybe a little bit crazy, but anyways, let's get straight into it. Starting with the first ability called Psychosis, which is on his C. Instantly fire a projectile forward, briefly reducing the vision range of all enemy players it touches. This projectile can pass through walls. Yes, this is an Omen Paranoia. Okay, I get it. It's literally just a Omen Paranoia, but let me add my own little ideas on top of these ideas to make them a little more unique. What if it shoots forward a Paranoia similar to Omen's, maybe a smaller cone, because at any moment you can press C again to pull it back towards you. Now that would be cool. You can either use it very basically, where you push it forward and then pull it back immediately to cover an area or double flash someone, or you can put it forward, move angles, then pull it back, so you kind of make a little bit of a projectile similar to how a Sova dart can curve once it bounces. You can use it by doing that manually. That could be kind of cool. His next ability is Q. It's called Bulwark. Instantly fire a projectile that expands into a transparent wall on impact with a surface. Hold the ability key to curve the orb in the direction of your crosshair. This one's actually very hard to imagine. Now, thanks to Deadlock, the transparent wall that you can't pass but things can pass through is something we can now imagine. I couldn't imagine trying to predict this before Deadlock came out, but now that we have Deadlock, you could see it like this, okay? Basically, that's the wall. But instead of an X, it would just be 2 points. The biggest cool part about it, instead of throwing it out like Deadlock does, it would be similar to Harbor, where it can be controlled around corners, or better yet, more similar to Jet, right? So either there's 2 things I can think of. Either like a Harbor wall, you can control it, and once you're done controlling it, what comes up is a Deadlock style wall, which pretend that huge Harbor snake wall, but it comes up, it's transparent, things can pass through it, but players can't. That would be pretty cool. Something like Deadlock on a larger scale does sound pretty cool. Alternatively, it could be a smaller wall similar to Deadlock. However, it can be curved like a jet smoke, and once it hits impact, it deploys. Those are the 2 things I can think of, and both sound pretty cool. The next ability, which is the E, is Obscurer. Instantly fire a projectile that expands into a lasting vision cloud on impact with a surface. Hold the ability key to curve the cloud in any direction of your crosshair. My idea here is it's very similar again to a Harbor smoke, right? It's an instant cast, but like Jet, you can control it. Right? You can control it. And I think this is actually a pretty cool idea in general. I wonder if maybe, so there's not as much overlap. It would be like a Jet smoke, but bigger and hollow. And with Jet's recent nerfs overall, with the smokes being shorter, it could also be a longer smoke. I know they originally did this because of the safety it brings, but on someone like a controller, it's not nearly as oppressive as someone like a duelist. So there's actually an empty gap for Riot to refill, and something like this doesn't sound too bad. Moving on from there, we have the ultimate. This one's extremely creative. Okay, Third Eye, X. Raz activates the power of Ohm and gains access to a random enemy's vision for a brief period of time. Requires at least 2 enemies alive to be usable. Now this concept in general is kind of crazy, right? Having someone else's vision is insane. The only thing I could think of is similar to a Cypher Cam. You'd access their vision and you'd see them from first person. However, the biggest part here is I don't really think it needs to like have 2 people alive. If there's 1 enemy alive, why not just use it? You can see where your enemy is, ton of intel, and you play off of it. And it's a cool way to receive that intel. And it has some counterplay, because if there's an enemy, both a visual cue as well as an audio cue that he's in your brain, I guess, you're able to look away, right? Like look down or look at the wall to deny that vision. The map would be hidden once you move to the enemy's vision. You don't get the map info, you only get the first person info. And I think it's just a very unique way to gain intel, and it wouldn't be strong. It'd actually be weak, because like a Sova dart is a lot more reliable, right? Just seeing people through walls is a lot more reliable. Cypher's ult would be a little bit more reliable. I even think the only way to make it useful is that it actually lasts a good amount of time, because another thing is you're also also disabled or weak, I guess, when you use it, right? Your body, like similar to a Cypher Cam, will just be static there. So it has a ton of weaknesses and wouldn't be overly strong at all, but definitely would be unique. Maybe you can hold it for a while. Maybe you could switch perspectives, go from multiple agents perspective over a 5-second period. I'm not entirely sure, but the concept is unique. The concept is very unique. Moving on from there, we're going to discuss Sign. Sign has a really cool design and definitely stands out. The biography here for this controller is Sign, cyborg mercenary hired under Kingdom. Manipulates our very reality with grid lines. He carries out his hits swiftly with his teammates while leaving his enemies defenseless, making them think up of a new approach to the battle. His first ability is C, Gridline Displacement. Instantly toss a device that, if within the radius, suspends players in air. This one was so hard to visualize. It's weird. It's definitely weird. This is what I could think up of, okay? Do you know, let's say, okay, think of a Cypher, right? Cypher cage is on the ground, right? It's a circular thing. It looks like the image the artist made. However, once activated, imagine it shoots straight to the sky like a beam, okay? It goes all the way to the sky limit, okay? It's transparent. It's not a smoke. It's transparent and goes all the way to the sky limit. Anyone within this radius, be it need to be bigger or smaller or wider for balance, gets almost stunned, like kind of like a Gecko ult, gets suppressed, but it doesn't last very long. Unlike the ult, it's quite quick. Now, the cool thing about this is on certain choke points, if Jet were to updraft and dash, she would get frozen midair. And she would kind of levitate there. She would get suspended midair. Maybe it's just a second, maybe it's even half a second, I'm not entirely sure, maybe 1.5 seconds, but either way, it's momentarily, but enough to completely break momentum. Raise satchels, jet dashes or updraft dashes, anyone who's made to get through as quickly as possible gets suspended. It would be completely weird and unique, but you know, Valorant's played with this before, like suppression with KO knife, and it turned out to be very good. So maybe this one could be as well. The next ability is Q, which is Materialize. Equip a teleportation device to bring up your minimap. Select a friendly player to teleport to their position. So I actually discussed this in my last video, and I gave it to a different agent. This is a cool idea. I really like this idea. Imagine you bring up a Brimstone style iPad, you can choose your teammates and teleport to them instantly. It would be insane and a very cool way to make a new teleport style ability. Now, for balance, you'd have to make it loud so the enemies know where you teleported to, and because they know that Q, they also know there's more than one enemy. They know that Sign teleported, as well as there has to be at least one teammate there. So it does give away position, but does allow very quick rotates. It'd be something that would be super cool, and it would allow him to be a control lurker, which I find super cool. Just in general, I used cool way too much there, but you guys get the idea. His next ability is E, Headhunter. Instantly mark a random player as a high value target. Whoever kills this target is rewarded 350 credits. Now, I'm gonna say this right away, right off the bat. No. Anything that messes with the economy at an RNG scale this much will not work. But here's my idea. Here's my take. Maybe it's crazy, but this is my take. Think of similar to like a Brimstone stim beacon. You throw it down, and on top of that stim beacon, basically there's a little bit of a player icon, right? Like a holographic visual that does Headhunter mark a player. Okay, let's say it's the enemy Viper. Enemy Viper gets marked. Over a 20, 15, or 30-second period, I don't know the good balance for it, she is the target. And if Sign or any other of his teammates kill that Viper, he gets all his abilities refreshed instantly, minus his ultimate. So Headhunter gets refreshed, Q gets refreshed, and C gets refreshed instantly, and he gets a set of abilities back. What's cool about this idea is it can be balanced in multiple ways. One, maybe Headhunter never gets refreshed, so only the Q and C get refreshed, meaning you only have to worry about those abilities twice at most, or 3 times depending on how many charges they have. Or we could make it so that only Sign has to headhunt, so only if Sign kills that Viper it gets refreshed, and then everything gets refreshed. There's a million ways to balance it with subtle tweaks, but the concept I think is kind of cool. Refreshing abilities is not something new, so having it part of the kit is okay and can be Sign specific with his overall mercenary design. His final ability, which is the ultimate Radianite EMP. Equip an illuminated Radianite crystal, fire to deploy an EMP, removing charge of enemy abilities. This is hilarious because this was made before, I think, KO, but KO's ult is basically this, but KO kind of suppresses abilities. This one's to remove charge. So I wonder, what if it costs like 8 ultimate points, right? but it removes one ultimate point from each of the enemies. This is kind of interesting. This is actually a really interesting concept, but does mess up with the flow a little bit too much. But here's my thought process. You save up your ult, and the enemies have 3 ultimate ready, right? They have 3 ultimates ready. You're worried about a wombo combo. So when the round starts, you pop this ult. Everyone loses 1 ult point, meaning 3 ults are now off the board, but they're only 1 ult point away. But then they have to fight for ult orb, maybe one gets ult, each of them get a kill, and they can still pull out their tactic for the next round. It's only like a delay, like a slight delay. I even think maybe it'll be too weak. Maybe in concept it's strong, but then in reality it's too weak. Maybe you can choose a target and you give up 8 ult points, but you remove like 4 of theirs or something. It's definitely something that conceptually sounds really interesting, but when you're messing with nuances similar to credits, it could be weird or frustrating, and worst case scenario, it could be something like a K ult instead. Radiant EMPs, it suppresses all abilities, but instead of pulsing multiple times and him getting revived like KO, it's just a flat timer, and it could be like map wide. It's like abilities gone. It's only for 10 seconds, but it applies to the entire map, has no radius. If he dies, it gets canceled instantly, can't be revived. It could also be something like that. It could be some sort of twist. Our final agent for today is Excellent or Excellent. The naming needs some work, but either way, we get the concept here of the artwork. Someone who's really cool and you can tell has a wolf with them. This is crazy. This is before the time of Fade, but I know it's already giving us Fade vibes. But let's read. This is 3 years ago. But all right, here we go. Excellent is an initiator, again like Fade, an alpha of his pack. He sees through the shadows and even hears whispers. Equipped with stealth abilities that will assassinate enemies in their sleep. Skills and abilities. C is Howl. Release a sound wave that travels in a path that freezes enemies for a short period of time. Soundwave can pass through walls. I mean, imagine similar to a KO dart, right? And you know how it has a radius? Imagine that radius is the howl, right? He screeches and that entire radius basically stuns the enemies. Worst case scenario, it could be a forward-looking howl, and it could be a stun a lot more reminiscent of Breach. It's not really that crazy. It's something we've seen before, but would fit the theme remarkably well for what this person designed. The next one is Q, which is Predator. Suppress your footsteps while gaining 1.25x speed for 15 seconds. Using this utility will inform nearby enemies. This is so cool. So basically, imagine like a stim beacon. You're running faster, right? You run way faster, but the biggest thing is that you have no footsteps. The initial cast does create a noise, right? So you can hear maybe a growl or a howl or whatever, but you get this idea that, okay, they've used Predator. But now you can run in any direction, you can run with your knife out to even go faster, and you're making no footsteps. The quick repositioning or rotations on this sound pretty balanced, fair, tactical, and man-oh-man, very on point to the design of what this agent's supposed to be. The next ability is E, which is Instinct. Select an area on the map that will hear running and shooting enemies within its AoE. Once heard, it will reveal their location to you, but not for teammates. Hearing an area will last 15 seconds. This one does sound a little bit complicated to understand, I'm not gonna lie, it took me a bit, but the best thing I could think of is similar to how Omen, you know, when he enters his smoke form, you can kind of control this area of effect. You throw this area of effect, and it's very small, similar to an Omen smoke, but if you catch someone in that angle or corner, they will be revealed to you through the wall or on your minimap. However, regardless of if they're within that cone, there will be sounds coming from that area. You can throw it into a corner, it'll create gun sounds or footsteps or whatever, making your enemies think that you're one way, but you come out the other. Overall, it's pretty good because it's kind of like Yoru footsteps, but instead of the buff being a clone that flashes, the buff is you can place it from across the map or place it from a distance and create space or trickery from somewhere else. But in case an enemy is already holding that area and they can see the effect being played there so they can call out that it's fake, you at least get a reveal. It's just like a double use. It's like a double-edged sword. You either can use it for intel, but it's a very small area and has to be specific, or better yet, use it for that trickery. I like this one a lot. Last but very much not least is the ultimate. Nocturnal is just called Nocturnal. This one's interesting because it's again playing with vision. A 2.5 second ultimate that will give you your enemy's vision. Left mouse button to switch from one vision to another. This is interesting because we also just discussed it earlier. I think it's a little bit of a wacky mechanic, but my thought process in this one to make it different than the earlier one is that you can still swap between the first person perspective of different teammates, or sorry, different enemies very rapidly. They don't know that you're looking through their eyes, unlike the one before I said they'll get pinged. but the vision is suppressed, similar to how a sky dog looks, right? So sky dog, if we just put it up in the air a little bit, this would be around the angle of a first person look, and that's kind of as far as you can see, but you can switch between them. They say 2.5 seconds. That's pretty quick to switch. I don't know how much vision you'll get, maybe 3 seconds, 4 seconds. It can't be very long because it would be powerful. It would be very, very powerful tool, but pretty cool idea. Pretty cool idea, very unique, very on point with, again, the agent design. And I gotta give it to this agent design. While we don't have much to go off visually, no art design, very basic footprint, not the best name, I think all the abilities were, you know, put around this whole, like, a predator wolf mix, you know what I mean, which is cool. It's definitely admirable. Quantum, and just let it cook, because this guy's design and thought process is really cool. And I'm throwing in my own ideas as well with some featured editing to give you guys the best visual possible. And let me just say, I want Quantum in the game. I want him in the game. Let's go. Now, Quantum's biography is: emerging from deep within the shadows of Kingdom, the rogue operative Quantum creates opportunity through bringing uncertainty in the battlefield, forcing caution through his presence, capitalizing on carelessness in the heat of engagements is Quantum's modus operandi. Operandi, I think. Anyways, ability number 1 is Paradox. Summon a destructible clone that can be placed in a stationary position or set to move on a path, stopping once a wall is collided with it. Here's a little in-game on what the clone would look to you, but of course to the enemies, it would look exactly like your player. Stay in sight. Stay in sight. Now, this one is extremely hard to imagine because, again, when it comes to clones, how do we make something different or unique from, you know, Yoru? This one is actually kind of easy. This one, imagine instead of just placing a clone, it opens like Brimstone's iPad and you choose where the clone will deploy. Furthermore, you can either just click and it'll deploy, or you can choose where it'll end and then it'll draw an auto path where the clone will walk to. It will literally walk path to path. Then, if it's shot, either it'll disintegrate, meaning choosing path to path is already a strong enough fake, and being able to do it like cross map is already strong enough. Or if you really want to get crazy, which it'll be too strong, but it'll be really cool, is once it's shot, it kind of defragments and in a small area creates paranoia, similar to how Omen's effects are, right? Just in a radius, it goes boop and creates paranoia in that area. Oh my god, that'd be so sick, dude. iPad choosing, deciding how the clone operates or where it walks, and then it fragments and explodes into paranoia. Sounds so cool. The next ability is called Rift. Open up a breach in space that Quantum can, at any time, travel back to by pressing Q. While the skill is in use, the Rift lasts 20 seconds and can be destroyed. This is literally a Yoru clone. This was made way before Yoru, but to be honest, it's also just not that bad to have something similar to a Yoru clone. Maybe, you know, to make it a little bit different. Oh my god, placing it on map would be too strong. It'd be kind of crazy, but it would be too strong. Either you can do it just like a Yoru clone where you can just place it down, but it can't slide, so it's a little bit weaker. You just got to place it down flat, and then you can teleport back to it. It's not a huge deal to have something that overlaps. Or this would also be broken, but I'm just imagining these like quantum effects where he like disintegrates and reappears. Imagine at any point, instead you have a one use, you open up that iPad again, you click on your ally, and you disintegrate and spawn next to your ally. Imagine. It'd be useless if your last one left, so it has a weakness, but if your ally's on one site, you can continue to fake another. You click on them, disintegrate, and pop up next to them. You can make it maybe a little bit slow and you're vulnerable, so if they get peeked, flashed, or completely start getting pushed, they can get countered. You can make it kind of loud so it gives away the ally's position. You can do something like that to balance it. But the thought process, am I right? I think that'd be kind of cool. The next one is Dimensional Tear, and you're going to be noticing a trend here. It all has a iPad-like game set similar to Brimstone, which, you know what, I would love to get another of. Anyways, Dimensional Terror, amazing icons, by the way. Open up a map and mark 3 beacons on the map with mouse 1, and then deploy them with mouse 2. Screens deploy between each beacon, blocking vision. Max distance between each beacon is 15 meters, which is actually massive. Now, to actually give you guys a visual is very hard. I thought of, like, imagine multiple harbor walls together. In this case, with my example, I made a square. It should have just been 3 beacons beacon, so maybe like a triangle, but you kind of get the idea. You can make this triangle beacon area in which you block off a lot of visions. Maybe it'll protect a plant, a diffuse from all different angles, and I think it would definitely create a unique shaped smoke. I don't know what angles it would completely block. I don't know how high it should be. Obviously, instead of like water, it'll be like Cyborg, kind of similar like Cypher's cage, but the concept is hard to imagine, but also easy to imagine. Does that make sense? Like a big triangular smoke is not hard to imagine, but because we don't have an oddly shaped smoke like that or vision blocking like that, we just have walls or circles, it's hard to imagine what it will block, if that makes sense. I don't know from a tactical perspective, but hey, unique ideas always take the W. The final ability is tunneling. Oh my goodness, this one's crazy. It's impossible to ever add this into Valorant, and it shouldn't be added. But can we just go on a imaginative spree together, because it's insane. Open up a passage between open spaces on a surface, allowing all agents, bullets, and abilities to pass through it for 30 seconds. So how do I even visualize this for you? He has an amazing picture which does the job for me, but I'm still gonna try to show it in game. Basically, imagine I go to a wall, right? I go to a wall and I decide to use my ult on this wall. It creates a passage that everyone can walk through, which is too strong. Can I just say that right off of the bat? Maybe we can't put agents through there. Like imagining cutting through the map for rotations with this ult. It's crazy. It's cool concept. And to be fair, the enemies could follow, right? You're opening the passage for both sides, and it could be really loud and show on everyone's map to be clear. My thought process here is maybe get rid of the agent part. Make it circular instead, and just allow abilities or bullets to pass through. So you can open up angles to play against, but you can't go through it, if that makes sense. So think of like, the best way I think of how the coding would work is imagine breach, right? Breach is, I forgot what it's called. Is it shock? Whatever. The one that pulses 3 times, soon to be 2 times. When it hits the wall, on the other side, it comes out. So imagine this circular area, right? It hits the wall, and on the other side, it comes out, but instead it just makes a hole. And through this hole, you can throw abilities or you can shoot. What's cool about not having agents go through is even if it's angled up, for example, it'll shoot from one side and come out the other, exposing a new angle from heaven down to main. Like, this would be insane. The amount of combo potential, the creative potential is endless. And because agents don't have to walk through, you know, it can be easier to code because you can angle it from 2 different areas and create a portal from both sides. Again, a little bit intense, and it would never be in the game because it just completely destroyed Valorant, but holy would it be fun. But that's enough about Quantum. Next up, we're going to be talking about Lola. Lola is a role which they put Faker, which is kind of a fake role, and her biography is Lola knows how to get noticed and likes to have all eyes on her. Her role is to deceive the enemy. Her diversions clear the way for her team. Can we really trust her? I really like Lola's design. It looks like it fits right into Valorant, which is insane. Like, this artwork is intense. It's so good. It's so good. Now, when it comes to her abilities, you need to keep in mind, she was here before Gecko, before Yoru's rework, before a lot of things. This is an old design. If we look at this page here, the chromatic duplication is one of her abilities. Create a static holographic double of Lola who can spot enemy in its field of view. Very useful for faking position. Now again, this was before Yoru had a clone. The idea here is once you shoot it, it turns your way and bang, but instead of shooting you, a little bit of a flag comes out. Now this would actually be incredibly weak. We didn't know this back then, but we now know with Yoru's clone it can walk. When it hits, it gets flashed and looks your way and flashes you, etc., etc. So this would be too weak. Here's my idea. You place down this holographic duplication, and unlike Yoru's clone, it doesn't expire. Then, if you shoot it when you're peeking, it will shoot back at you, but only a single bullet counts as damage. So it'll shoot back like normal, but only 1 bullet is allowed to count as damage. So in this example here, you can, let's say, place it looking down main, and if someone's peeking, they might be forced to shoot back. They might jump peek you a couple times, and if you don't shoot or move a single time, they can sort of tell. But you could also still fake clone, which is something that's obviously popular with Yoru as well. Now, I think there need to be some balancing things, like if it's a shotgun, it'd be really strong up close, but maybe that's okay. If it's an operator, it would no scope and obviously miss you. But overall, I think the concept is really, really cool, and Riot can definitely get more creative when it comes to clones in general. The next one's kind of crazy because it's the fake spike, which is Plant a fake spike, making exactly the same sounds but not exploding. Faking a plant on a bomb site. This is a cool concept because another thing you can do is on the defender side, place the spike next to the real spike and it'll start diffusing next to it. Obviously we know now there's Gecko, and that is exactly what little bro does. But this again was way before Gecko even existed, and I actually think another ability that diffuses a spike is okay because we know that it's balanced like it is with Gecko. I think this concept is okay. However, it is the fake spike that I couldn't wrap my head around. At first I thought this is really cool. Imagine sending Lola to one site to fake a plant. Once it's planted, it starts beeping and blah blah blah, but it doesn't explode. You know what I mean? And you can't diffuse it and it'd be really bright pink. So as long as you get any visual on it, it'd be obvious. Then I realized they could just look at the top where the timer is, and if the timer is not initiated, they know it's a fake plant. It's like too counterable. You know what I mean? It's too obvious. The only thing I could think of is allowing you to place down the spike. Think of like how you place down a Killjoy Molly, but it doesn't do anything yet when it's on attack. And wherever you plant, it'll pop up and start planting as well. Meaning if you're able to throw this, maybe like Molly lineup, throw this onto one site, it'll be completely like invisible. Then you rotate to the other site and then you plant. The enemies will hear it on both sites, and they won't know which site is the real bomb until they get the visual on it, meaning you'd have to learn lineups that kind of hide the bomb. Of course, if an enemy's on site, they'll be able to tell quickly, so it would have a very niche use case, but if used right, it'd be insane. Imagine 2 people go to one site, clear it, the other 3 go to the other site, both enemies hear both plants on both sites with 2 enemies on it. It's a 50-50 gamble. Again, it wouldn't be the greatest thing of all time, but it definitely would be a lot of fun. Her final ability, because the designer didn't make an ult for her, is Love Potion. It's a pink gas created in secret by Lola. When an enemy inhales this gas, it will fall in love with Lola. It can't shoot her, but can shoot other opponents for 5 seconds. Now, this was also really hard to imagine. I love how there's even an in-game effect on how the agent would look when they're in love with Lola in quotations, and this is how I thought about it. Basically think like a Viper Molly, right? Except when it lands, it immediately explodes on impact, not activated. We'll get something like that. It'll be semi-transparent, so you could see through it, but it'd be still some sort of smoke, and then it'd be pink, okay? So Viper Molly, think like the not Molly, but like the smoke hits, it explodes instantly. Pink and slightly see-through, that would be the Love Potion, right? The enemies that you hit fall in love with you for 5 seconds. So this would be something you need to line up or peek with, right? When you peek, anyone who's pink, if they shoot at you, the damage doesn't count. Now, this is a lot of hard coding, but I believe in Riot. The damage doesn't count. So imagine this, you need to clear the enemy's backside here. You get close, you lob it over, it hits, it splashes, you peek, someone's in love with you, they can't shoot back, you kill them. This isn't too crazy because it's similar to a stun or a flash. Of course, unlike those two, there's a chance you can still die, so maybe this is too strong. Maybe instead of 2 uses, it's just 1 use. Maybe it's a bigger radius and becomes the ult. I'm not entirely sure, but man, would it be satisfying. I mean, Gecko, you know, his ult completely paralyzes a group of agents who can't do anything back, but they can't do anything back in general. In this case, you just can't shoot one enemy back, meaning if you're hit but from far away, you can still peek other enemies or play against other enemies. Like, it's literally just to isolate 1v1s against Lola, so I think it's creative. Maybe a little bit insane, but definitely creative. Again, you've probably been seeing these in the background. Lola's design with the lollipop. They even designed the in-game look of Lola. They have some cards. It's just crazy. The designer went insane when it comes to this agent design. Usually I cover a lot more agents when it comes to these videos, but these 2 alone were so detailed that I'm gonna cut it short here and make another video in the future. I hope you like it. Raj, and let's be honest, take a look at his design, including that glove. Bro, this looks so sick. His straight up design is immaculate. I'm not gonna lie. Now, he has a little bit of a synopsis, which is just as deadly as he is confident. The Chicago native Mirage is a modern day mobster, able to smuggle a Radianite to the highest bidding client with ease. Through his abilities, Mirage is able to copy and paste other agents' abilities and even appearance to help his allies with unpredictability. Like, yo, hello? Bro's got lore and everything. We even got a nice little mock-up on how his face would look. There's just so much cool stuff happening here. And my favorite part is when the artists themselves give us what they'd like it to look like in-game. So his first ability, Distortion, equip a projectile reflective smoke that detonates upon landing on the floor. The smoke creates a reflective surface that mirrors the area around it. So it's almost like a distortion slash like mirror effect. Like, bro, I mean, my FPS, but like, fuck it, let's ball. This is so cool. Now, the mirror image. Hold key to reveal a roster of enemy agents. Fire to select the agent of your choice upon activation. Mirage transforms into the selected agent, and Mirage can only be holding his melee while activated. So I assume this is so you can mirror the enemy and use the abilities to help out your team, but not go straight in and like frag out yourself. Now, what's really cool is that they have a lot of things here that you can pause and read. Like there's a brief wind up. It'll only last 10 seconds, but I could see this being really, really cool. Transforming into the enemy to use your ability or cause confusion would cause confusion. I mean, just think of a simple Yoru clone that walks in a straight line can cause confusion. And I love anything to do with mind games. Now, the next ability is a helping hand. Fire with crosshair hovered over an ally to copy their signature ability. The ability must be chosen before the round starts and only lasts for the following round. So it means you kind of yoink someone's ability. Let's say, for example, Phoenix's Molly, and then you can use it for that round. So each round you basically get one ability from your team, which is kind of crazy because if you duplicate it like a few certain signature abilities, it's going to get chaotic, like really chaotic. His ability Heist is a similar idea here, but you target a dead enemy to steal their ultimate. Now here's my thing about this is that I believe Mirage is just a little bit too much when it comes to taking abilities. Like if you think of all his abilities or just taking other people's abilities, he's going to be a mishmash of a bunch of agents, which I get it is the concept and it's a cool idea, but it's going to be too chaotic. What I believe is 1 or 2 copy abilities, then he needs 2 of his own unique abilities that fit into Valorant, but I still think he's a cool design. All right, for the next agent concept, oh my goodness, we got a demigod emperor. Dude, it is insane. A skilled warrior with some special abilities, starting with Q equip, which is a Shakti dagger. Fire to throw the dagger, explodes when it comes into contact with the floor, damaging first, and you can then instantly use it to create a field of lava that slows players. And then you can pick it up to redeploy. Bro, these concepts are crazy. I love them. They're actually insane. Now, E, equip a wall of hellfire. Fire to summon the wall above the ground. Players hit are slowed. This is like Phoenix X Harbor. C, equip a projection of the battle map. Fire to set locations where the intangible fabric dome can be placed for blocking vision. So that's just a yoink from Brimstone. And then X ultimate. This one's a little hard to understand. Equip a projection of the battle map. Fire to set entrance and exit gates. Maximum 2 players can be teleported during the usage. So this is basically just a teleporter on both sides, similar to Symmetra from Overwatch. Now, in my opinion, this concept low-key checks out. I don't know how powerful a teleporter will be since we've never played with that, but the rest are kind of stuff that exists in the game, but just very unique to this agent concept and could kind of work. Now, by theory, it sounds like a stacked agent, but overall, it seems like a fun agent as well that could be in the game. The next agent's artist kind of goes crazy. So here we sort of have a sketch of Hiraya, I think is how you say it, which is a Rani from the Pearl of the Orient Sea. Hiraya is the protector of the deep, someone who is calm as the ocean, but destructive as the waves, which is really well written. I love that. And I just love the abilities. They made it really realistic, especially in game, which we'll get to. Starting with C, blinding pearls. Throw a pearl that can blind enemies and teammates within its area of effect. It can be detonated by pressing F. So it is a blinding trap, which I think is really cool. We got Octopus Ink, placed in a single location and detonates when enemies are in range. Once triggered, it explodes, and ink exposing the enemy's footprints that eventually fades as the enemy gets farther. Footprints can also be seen on the minimap. This is really cool, especially with the minimap thing. It means it helps the team a lot. Then we have Stingray, mainly used for escaping purposes. Transform into a Stingray for 5 seconds with an incredible speed, but highly vulnerable, allowing to escape or transfer to a more secured position. Enemies can shoot and destroy the Stingray and will cancel the escape, respawning the player from their initial position. Pressing E will return Hiraya to her human form. Then we have Sacrifice, the ultimate. When outnumbered, Hiraya can sacrifice her life, resurrecting 3 of her last killed teammates with 50 HP. The ultimate will not lose weapons for the next round. This is so weird. This is the only one that's kind of wacky, because if you're like last person standing, you press X, 3 of your teammates come back, all 50 HP, one of those being a Sage or a Skye, and then it heals everyone else. I think I like the concept, but like I think it'll be just way too powerful. It has to have a range. So maybe if like 3 of you guys die, like kind of like Old Mercy ult from Overwatch, if it's maybe within a range, it could be cool. But overall, I think it might be a little too wacky, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I mean, we have ISO with a whole dimension and it wasn't OP, so maybe there's a way to balance this. I think the rest of her abilities are unique to her character, fit her lore that was written, and to be honest, not too overpowered. Someone who's focused around traps, but also has an escape. Like, she sounds fun to play, I'm not gonna lie. Next up, we have Mission. Oh my god, this design is crazy. There's a lot of text to go through. Arguably a little bit too much. There's just so much going on here. A former worker from Kingdom's facility in Japan, the undead assassin deploys radionite webs and uses her arms from her radionite spine to seek the enemy and protect her allies with a thirst of revenge on those who betrayed her during the incident. Nickname is Mish. They have the age of 23, nationality Osaka, Japan, living in Tokyo. There's a bunch there you can pause and read, and she even has an unmasked version and her spine that you can see more clearly. She has abilities Web, Caring Hands, Clawed, and Inner Beast. Let's go down and look at each one, starting with Web. Spits a spiderweb looking at the wall, making her and her ally allowed to climb it. Basically, it literally makes it like a string, which is so cool. It makes it a string, like a rope that you can use. That's creative. That's very creative. I think this is really, really cool. The amount of team play stuff you could do sounds so fun. Next, we have Claude. Deploys an arm on a spot of the map and works as a ward to detect enemies when the enemy is near it. The arm will start scratching them until it gets a bullet. So it is just one hit. It does 5 damage per scratch, and you can see it'll also act like a ward, so the enemy will pop up on your minimap in the top left corner. Then we have Caring Hands. Sends one of her arms towards an ally or herself as the arm transforms into a shield, making herself or someone invincible until the shield is broken. So it's 5 bullet shield. It seems like it's more like an ISO shield right in front of them. This doesn't seem too bad. Like some sort of ISO shield for your team sounds kind of cool. Again, it's all about like team synergy, which makes her so interesting. Inner Beast removes her mask to give a big yell, ordering all the arms that are used or not to get to the nearest enemy from her spot. Catching an enemy will make them blind for 2 seconds and deal 20 damage. This is actually kind of too weak. Basically everything deployed will all go towards one enemy. For only 20 damage and blind for 2 seconds, and it removes everything off the map. This is actually kind of too weak. This could be this could be a buff somehow. They could buff it somehow, but otherwise this agent concept is freaking cool as hell. All right, now here the next and last agent is a duelist. When Viper experiment on Omen went wrong, Kerber didn't hesitate to try the next test on his own body. The experiment ended catastrophically. Kerber lost all his body flesh and was transferred to the nearest critical healthcare center, where he woke up from 3-year coma, finding his body completely covered in liquid rubber. And then all of his abilities are based off of that. Bouncing bullets. Kerber equips a device that will bounce his weapons, light, medium, heavy bullets on walls, reducing their damage by 30%. The bullets' travel distance after bouncing are shorter than usual, and it depends on the ammo weight. Heavy bullets can't be bounced on walls, so you can't Odin spam, but like Loki, that's just like Hanzo's scatter arrow, which sounds not very tactical, but like fuck it, we ball. Q, stretching mode. Activate suit, gets a unique rubber effect, reflects incoming light ammo bullets for 10 seconds at random directions. It also gives you a 10% damage reduction for heavier bullets, and heavier bullets will also push you in the opposite direction. Like low-key, this is a little too niche, like it depends on the gun they're using and stuff like that, but I think conceptually it's cool. Like reflecting bro, just too many bouncing bullets though for a tactical shooter. Conditional faller. Kerber immediately activates his bouncing shoes, gaining fall damage immunity for a short duration. Bouncing off a high cliff will bounce Kerber up in the air again 2 times, reducing some accuracy. Now I'm not gonna lie, I actually think the bouncing is fine. It's again too niche because it'll be map dependent. Like if it's too much of a flat map, like you're not gonna find much use. I think it would be with the condition where if you're standing still, you also get a small up, almost like a small jump draft, like updraft, and then when you land you get a bounce, so you can bounce up to 2 times. Like if you're a little bit bouncy, that's not a big deal because we've seen crazy mobility in Valorant, and actually this sounds kind of weak compared to race satchels and like double updraft or single updraft dash, you know what I mean? His ult though, hopping playground. Kerber channels himself after 8 seconds. Kerber transforms the ground into rubber, launching and bouncing all enemies in range until the ult ends. Enemies will suffer accuracy reduction while Kerber and his allies won't. So kind of like, you know, it's kind of like a breach ult if you kind of think about it, right? So it sounds crazy. It was kind of like a breach ult X harbor ult, but you kind of just bounce multiple times. But if as long as the enemies can bounce out of the area, this is not the craziest one. I just think bouncing bullets in stretching mode is just a little too chaotic for Valorant. Maybe like bouncing bullet for the last like 1 second, so you only get to shoot like, or maybe it's bullet amount, so you can only bounce 3 bullets. I don't know, but even then, I don't know. But we have Sova darts. I don't know. Let me know what you think. This one's messing with my brain. I'm not gonna lie, bro. If you somehow watch this entire movie, like low-key comment that you feel like a pizza flavored muffin down below. Let's confuse everyone who didn't make it to the end, and I'll heart or pin one of you. I swear.